This is Second Down on ESPN Radio. Christian Gokel alongside PJ Zuko. Glad to have y'all hanging out with us here on this Thursday afternoon as we're just getting closer and closer to a rematch for the ages. Georgia, Alabama coming up on Monday afternoon. But PJ, as we're getting, or Monday night, pregame coverage starts for you Monday afternoon. Kind of where I was going to go. I was going to talk about our schedule coming up, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. We're sitting here 4 days out now.
Right.
How you feeling?
Well, that's kind of what I wanted to ask you. I mean, let's be real. We all know the situation here, kind of where I'm from, whatever. My team's situation. My team's not been a national championship or insanely close to one since I've been alive. Like, there's been a few good years, but how about you? I mean, like, we're getting. How does it feel for you getting closer?
Why are you avoiding the question,
through
PJ?
the week?
Why are you avoiding the question?
I'm not avoiding it at all.
It feels like
you're
you're.
Who's a Georgia fan?
But that's why I ask you, because I don't feel like I can give partial opinions on this. So that's why I ask you how you're feeling about this going into it. You're supposed to be my non-biased Big Ten expert coming at it from the 30,000 foot perspective, just looking down on it.
I am genuinely excited for the football game itself, because I know it's going to be two incredible teams, and I feel like it's going to be a better matchup than the first time this year, because just I think we saw a subpar performance from Georgia the first time around, and I don't think we're going to see that same kind of performance. Like, we've only really seen that from Georgia one time this year, and it was in the most important game of the year. So
you are going with the narrative, and a lot of people are going into this game. You're going with the narrative that Georgia, 13 out of 14 games, was an unbelievable defense, giving up 6.9 points per game, just strangle-holding the rest of the offenses. And the Alabama, that wasn't the rule. That was the outlier. Georgia's defense had one bad game, and it was on the biggest stage, but you expect the defense we've seen for the other 13 games to come out here.
Yes, and that's not, like, I can see kind of where you're, like, that's not discrediting Alabama. That's not saying it's easy to play Alabama or anything like that, or nothing that Alabama did made it more tough on Georgia. It was just all Georgia's fault. Like, that's not insanely what I mean. I'm just saying, because, like, again, Alabama played A+ football. Nick Saban's a freaking mastermind. He's the best college football coach in my mind in the history of college football. But I think that was combined with a really bad performance from Georgia, kind of on a whole. Like, there were some good performances here and there in that game, but on the whole, it was a C to C+ performance. So, I would say that Georgia played subparly, and I don't think that's going to happen again, especially with the momentum and what they did to Michigan and just rolling into it again. But just, getting back to the closer I get, it's not really changing a lot for me. My excitement level is high for this game in the value and in the type of football that,
like, as a person with no rooting interest, this should be an awesome game. It's like clearly the two best teams in the country going head to head.
Right, for sure. And that's why I say too, I'm excited about the football game itself. I'm not excited about all the hoopla around it, right? You say that, like, I'm on the outside looking in.
Define hoopla.
All the SEC crap.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, because that's what we're going to hear. We've already heard it. I mean, I've already seen it on Twitter or whatever, and it's just something I roll my eyes over and whatever. But, like, some people might think that I'm not looking forward to this game because of that, but it's actually the opposite. Like, I'm excited for the game itself. I'm not like hoping both teams lose right now. If it was Ohio State and Michigan, I hope there was a way that both of them would lose. But
okay.
I'm excited for a really good football game. But yeah, the SEC is good because these two teams are good, and in the national championship.
Is that your Tipton guy again?
Yeah, he's coming out like that. I'm not excited for that because that already happened once these two teams won their semifinal games, and it was, man, the SEC's
okay. Well, let me ask you this.
strong.
Okay, you're actually leading this conversation where I wanted to go.
Wow, that's crazy.
Is this bad for college football? with the way it's gone, I think I don't want to get this wrong, but I think this is correct. Out of the last 14 national championships, the SEC has had 16 teams
Right. That
playing
is
for the national championship.
Yeah.
Is the consolidation of power, because we were just talking about the Rose Bowl between Texas and USC for the national championship, and I still say it's the greatest game ever played. Just in terms of entertainment value, the star power that was in there, I still think it's the best game ever played. We're like, is Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, are those guys like the most famous college football players of all time? No. Is Vince Young? No. But the fact that all three of them played in a game against each other with all the other guys, I think it makes it the greatest game of all time. So there's a bunch of other games like that, but the fact that Alabama's been Alabama, and now Georgia is turning into, I mean, say what you will, it's Alabama East. They just copied the formula and moved it east, right? Have they had the results in the biggest game? No, but in terms of recruiting and in terms of winning, Georgia's basically been right there. When was the last time? Well, I guess last year, but prior to last year, Georgia hadn't lost more than one regular season game in 3 years.
Right.
So it's been domination, but then on the national stage, it's always an SEC team. And for the most part, it's been Alabama. We've had LSU hop up there as well. So is this bad for college football?
I think,
and when I say college football, I mean like the health of the sport in general in terms of love and viewership around the country.
Right. I think is actually this is weird, because I think actually college football was kind of in a worse state 2 or 3 years ago, because it wasn't Georgia and it wasn't an SEC team. So I think some people look at that and say, well, that's good. But
where's just Alabama and Clemson
it was
every
just
year?
Alabama and Clemson back and forth, and no one was really close. I mean, you have Georgia come up and beat Oklahoma and get in the national championship that one year with Clemson. I think that was the same year they had. Was that the same year they had Kelly Bryant and they played Alabama in the semifinal? And
so that was the 2017 season, I believe, is what you're referring to, like where it was like where they didn't have Trevor Lawrence yet. It was the year before Trevor Lawrence got there. They make it to the semifinals. They get beat by Alabama. Then Alabama beats
like
Georgia
24-3
in the national championship. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So that year outside of things, and Georgia was slowly on the come up. Like obviously they were right there, and
making it to the national championship. I don't know about slowly.
Right. They've just been progressed ever since then, I feel like. But so like I think college football wasn't in a great state then, because it was Clemson and Alabama and really kind of Georgia and Oklahoma too, and really everyone else. Like, even if someone else got into the college football playoff, it wasn't competitive. Michigan State got in, trounced. Washington got in, trounced.
Yeah.
So, like, it was those teams, and that's it. At least this year, while I agree that Georgia and Alabama clearly have been the most talented and probably best teams all year, all the other games and all the other teams and all the other conferences, it was insane, and it was fun to watch, and it was unpredictable. So that kind of kept the interest level up. I feel like kind of revived a little bit of the sport. But now you just need those teams to find a way to catch up to Georgia and Alabama. Because if this becomes...
That's a great point.
Right.
That's a great point.
If this becomes the next 5 years, it's going to get boring and stale again.
Yeah, so I think the biggest problem facing college football right now, just in terms of in this scope, right? Who are the top teams, and does that affect viewership because parts of the country aren't interested? I think more so than the fact that Alabama and Georgia are this good, it's that the entire West Coast is dead.
Gone.
Like there's no competitive teams coming out of the West Coast right now. There aren't any of them. And I would honestly say with Oklahoma, what's happening there, like the dumpster fire that Oklahoma is right now, and Brent Venables hopefully can bring it back up in a hurry, because I think college football is better when Oklahoma is good. I think you can go all the way to Texas A&M. Like if you're looking on a map, go all the way to Texas A&M before you can find a contender on that side of the map.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that more so than Georgia and Alabama being in the national championship is hurting college football, because, and I think it starts with recruiting. We talked about yesterday how Texas A&M and Clemson and Georgia and Ohio State and Alabama are just kind of splitting the top of the pile of recruits, and everybody else is getting everything. If you are a USC or a UCLA fan or an Oregon fan or a Utah fan or just someone out there, Colorado, if you're a fan of those teams, you're like, man, it's just boring to watch these SEC teams. Don't blame the SEC teams, blame your teams.
Yeah.
Because they need to keep their guys at home. I mean, a majority of Alabama's roster is from Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Florida. And then you know what they do? They go get your best quarterback.
Yep.
Right? Ohio State, majority of their rosters from Ohio. They go pick up some guys from Georgia, and then they go and get your best quarterback. Right? That's what's wrong. Clemson, even though DJ Uiagalelei hasn't been great this year, took him from California.
Right.
Imagine if Bryce Young stays and goes to USC. Right. Imagine if CJ Stroud is playing for UCLA.
Right.
Or Oregon or someone like that. Right.
Can you imagine? Sorry, it just like you put that in my head now. Can you imagine Bryce Young? And I know he's kind of falling off, but he's kind of rebuilt UCLA though at the same time. Can you imagine Bryce Young in Chip Kelly's offense?
Oh my goodness.
In UCLA?
Like 700 yards a game.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah, like 700 yards a game.
But yeah, to your point. Exactly.
So you want to get this thing to more of a national relevancy, put some borders up.
Catch up, man.
Yeah, put like Kirby Smart made it his goal when he took over in Georgia to try to put a fence up around Georgia and keep the best recruits here. And for the most part, he has done a better job than the prior regime at UGA. And obviously, Georgia's such a talent-rich state. I mean, per capita, I know I say this all the time, but per capita puts more NFL players out or has more players in the NFL per capita this year than any other state. Mm-hmm. Right? That you're not going to keep everybody home. And you only have so many slots. But then what do you do if you're Georgia? You go get the best player from Mississippi into Kobe Dean.
Yep.
Right? You go get Cedric Van Pran, your starting center from Louisiana. Right? So it's just picking and choosing who you want and keeping a majority of, say, 80% of the top recruits home. And Georgia's done that again this year. So it's more so than complaining that Georgia and Alabama are there and it's just a boring title matchup. Number one, I think when the two best teams in the country play, it's never boring. Right. Regardless of who you root for.
Yes.
Like if Ohio State and Michigan are the two best teams in the country in 2005 or something like that, and you want to watch that game, I'm here for that. I don't care if they're in the same conference. If they're the two best teams, they're the two best teams. Alabama and Georgia are pretty clearly the two best teams in the country. And I'm looking forward to that matchup. And if you want to complain about the fact that you have a bunch of SEC teams in there, don't blame the SEC. Blame your conference commissioners. Blame your head coaches for not recruiting well. Yep. That's what it all comes down to. Kirby Smart said it after the Florida game. You can't out-coach great recruiting. Mm-hmm. It is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, they
like PJ, I love you. I love you. Who'd you say is like the most like technical mastermind coach of all time?
Oh God, because that's a different question but I probably
let's say Steve Spurrier. Offensively, maybe.
Yeah, that's pretty.
If Steve Spurrier has 11 PJ Zuccos, I don't care what coach is coaching Georgia's defense. He ain't scoring.
No, not at all. I mean, it's good luck trying to throw the fade to the 5'5" guy.
Listen, we're just running a lot of mesh routes, a lot of tunnel screens.
6'1" cornerback.
You're chopping every time at the line.
It's not going to happen.
It's going to be rough. But you guys are going to be there's going to be a lot of heart on that team. I know that much.
For sure.
I know that much. But again, I don't think it's bad for the sport. I think more so what's bad for the sport is that the entire West Coast, like I said, is dead.
Yeah. I mean, think of what, so much focus was on two SEC teams and a non-Power 5 getting in and all this other stuff that, to your point, think of who we didn't have in the college football playoff. I mean, that wasn't talked out about enough.
USC hasn't been relevant since we started the college football playoff.
Yeah, no.
UCLA hasn't been relevant.
Close.
Stanford hasn't been relevant.
Right.
And so you think back to the pre-Final Four, and Stanford was still there. I mean, Andrew Luck didn't play college football too long ago.
Yeah.
Right. Was McCaffrey played in the college football playoff era?
Yeah. Yeah, he just if I remember right, the quarterbacks on those teams.
Yeah, they cooked in the Rose Bowl, but like USC hasn't had a team like that.
No.
And so I think when certain teams, like I said, it's not good for college football when Texas isn't good.
Right.
I don't think it's good for college football when Michigan's not good.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's certain teams that it's better for college football when they're good. And right now you have is that like a greater land area? Like what we're talking about, just not being relevant whatsoever in the college football national landscape.
Yeah, I mean, think about what it is right now.
I said
It's-
from Washington
Yeah.
down to the Arizonas, over to Texas A&M and up. There are no nationally relevant teams out there.
there's a pretty good gap like in between the Southeast and because even Cincinnati, right? That's
Yeah.
Big Ten area. So like really it's Big Ten area and it's the Southeast right now for college football. If you're looking for intriguing, important college football, that's kind of it. Which it's just sad. And it's
And in the
insane.
not too distant past, Marcus Mariota was cooking Florida State
Right.
and playing a pretty competitive game, I'd say, against Ohio State in the first college football playoff. But since then, all challengers from the West Coast, i.e. Washington, have just gotten massacred, and there just really hasn't been anyone else since then. So, like I said, don't look at Georgia and Alabama. Maybe look in your own backyard before you start complaining about a SEC championship game. I think that's where we're at right here. We got to take a quick break. We'll come back with more right here on Second Down after this. want to dive into some college football headlines here on Second Down. Look, listen, there's college football news happening outside of Alabama and Georgia, PJ. I know that's all you want to talk about.
Of course, yeah, always.
But there's college football news happening outside of those guys. And one of the big stories coming along today, TCU running back Zach Evans is transferring, and he's been in the portal for a while now, but he is transferring to Ole Miss. And I think Ole Miss is going to be one of the teams to watch in the offseason because you're losing a lot. Number one, did you see what the diagnosis ended up being for Matt Corral?
A sprained ankle.
A sprained ankle. It was a little dramatic.
Well, I don't know. I have heard, I have never had one. Like, I've had a sprained ankle. I've never had a high ankle sprain. So, like, I have heard that those are some of the worst, like, non-bone breaking kind of injuries you can get as an athlete. So, and I've seen some guys get high ankle sprains that kind of react the same way. So I
think it was more like, listen, I have had some like bad ankle stuff, like dislocated an ankle playing basketball.
Yeah, I
and
forget that.
and stood back up on it and relocated it in a bad way.
A friend did that
when I did it. Yeah, so ankles suck and it hurts and it's nauseating when you do it. But the reaction on social media and kind of the tears and the carted off, it was like his leg had been amputated on the field.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm just saying, a little dramatic. But that being said,
for reference, I did listen to that on the radio. I didn't get to see it for myself. So, but I will say that the reaction they were describing on the radio, yeah, probably a little dramatic.
Well,
they were saying
yeah.
he like threw his helmet and all this other stuff.
Well, yeah, and it's just like all the stuff like after the Kirk Herbstreit, players don't love football, and then the other side of it's like players shouldn't play in these bowl games because they don't matter. It's a whole thing. But that being said, I want to get back to it. Zach Evans transferring to Ole Miss. I think a lot of Georgia fans will remember Zach Evans because he was a big-time running back recruit, 5-star out of Texas. Mm-hmm. And basically he was like a 0-hour commit to Georgia, but then the NLI, you got to be careful with that now, NIL, NLI.
Yeah, for sure.
The NLI just like never comes in.
Yeah.
And it was between Georgia and another school, and I'm trying to remember which one it was. But then he ends up going to TCU after just a whole rigmarole that had gone on there. And then TCU, obviously, they part ways with Gary Patterson, and then Zach Evans just really never caught his stride out there. So now he's going to Ole Miss. But Ole Miss, I think, is a team that we always do this at the beginning of the year, like which team will have the biggest like number separation in terms of the win-loss column. I think Ole Miss probably has a chance to do that in terms of going the wrong way, just the biggest numerical difference in terms of wins and losses from 2021 to 2022. Because remember, this year, first time in program history, they won 10 games in the regular season.
Yeah,
I would not be shocked at all with all the players that they're losing and also playing in the SEC West and how good that's going to be next year if they're 5-7.
Yeah, I think this is kind of where the reference point is for me. If it's, if it's the same team rolling into next year, where I know you already got Zach Evans, that's one. If it's the same team rolling into next year that you have on this roster, I would agree with you. I'd say, yeah, like 4-8, 5-7, probably most likely going to happen. But I mean, Lane Kiffin's also their head coach, and we got the free agency basically in college football with the transfer portal and everything. I'm insanely interested in seeing how many people they can bring in. Like, can this become Michigan State South when it comes to different people and impact players that they can get via the transfer portal and basically rebuilding a team in that way? Kind of saw the same thing at Tennessee as well after they lost so much. So I'm very intrigued at that. If they can go out and get some guys in the transfer portal, maybe we don't see that much of a fall off, but if Zach Evans is the only one, it could be a very tough year. Yeah, for sure.
All right, another headline coming out. Aiden Hutchinson has officially declared for the NFL draft. I've seen a lot of mock drafts that have him as the number 1 overall pick. I've seen a plethora of mock drafts that have him as a top 5 pick. I think the conversation needs to be had, though, is do you need to take a second look at him after what happened in the Orange Bowl?
Right.
Because everyone has been in love with this dude since that highlight at the Ohio State game where he just pancakes an offensive tackle who was just kind of misstepped, pancakes the offensive tackle, and then gets to the quarterback. Do you know how many sacks Aiden Hutchinson had last year?
Not a lot. I don't
0.
think. Yeah.
Played in 2 games, and then
Yeah.
obviously a COVID year, so we can call that one a wash. Had 0 sacks his freshman year, and he had 3 sacks his sophomore year.
Right.
Or 3.5, I should say. 3.5. So he had almost as many sacks in one game against Ohio State. I think he had 3 against Penn State as well.
He was
Right?
out there. Yeah.
Yeah, so
for
he
sure.
had almost as many sacks in those 2 games than he did in his career coming into this season.
I could tell you why he had
Yeah,
that many
and so
sacks
he
against Penn
has
State,
he
though.
has 14 sacks this year, but again, 6 of those came in 2 games.
Right.
And like you said, against a Penn State offense that was atrocious.
Yeah, and Sean Clifford holds the ball for 25 minutes in the backfield. But
And then in a weird Ohio State game, listen, he had a great game, but I think if any other player, because I think Aiden Hutchinson kind of rode the Michigan Star or Comet, whatever you want to call it, that kind of shot across the college football sky this year. And he was kind of the face. He's the edge rusher and probably the highest draft pick off this team. So he became a star. Michigan's that level of a team that when they're good, the players on the team are going to become a star.
You're going to have someone get rised up to probably higher than they should be. Yeah.
Right. But every now and then, players run into a 3-sack game. Like Vic Beasley led the NFL in sacks one year.
Yeah.
I don't even know if he's on an active roster right now.
Right.
Right. So
Right.
it's just sacks to me are an interesting, but can also be a misleading stat, I guess is the best way to put it. Because how many of those Vic Beasley sacks were like quarterbacks either A, holding onto the ball too long, or B, like he gets pressured from one side and just kind of like runs into the waiting arms of the other guy.
Right.
So it's just sacks are what they are. And if you're picking Aiden Hutchinson with your tens of $1 million pick because of 14 sacks, I would go put on that Georgia game.
Yeah.
Because he got swallowed up in that game.
He did.
And then there's obviously the highlight of Jamari Sawyer pancaking him, but more so than that, I mean, when he would just one-on-one with Warren McClendon won that battle almost every single time.
Yeah.
And if I have a guy who I'm going to spend a top 5 pick on, I need him, and not saying anything about Warren McClendon, I think he's going to be a high draft pick when he decides to go, but I need him dominating.
For sure.
Like Von Miller, like you're literally, they're talking about drafting him in Von Miller era.
Yeah.
Or area of the draft. And I think you need to take a really long look at him because I don't know that he's that dude.
Very much so. And I think a broader point in this is probably the way the lack of sure they proved their point and that a lot of them had good seasons, but the lack of star potential at the quarterback position, I think kind of elevates some of these other guys. And yeah, just the crazed situation that we've had with him over the past, month or two. But I would say also like your point about the one play, the one highlight reel play that they had in the Georgia game, and then really just him. That's like a small part of a broader point to me, because Oregon's one of those teams that I'll always watch. I don't know why, but
you just like the uniforms. It's okay.
Probably, but like for a long time, I want to watch Oregon games. So like it is what it is. They're just always fun and exciting. They seem to be anyway. So I get so frustrated when you have these players that, like you said, have a couple big games or have one good year, and we totally ignore the rest of their production while we're also ignoring like Thibodeau's production. Why has everyone fallen off of him and elevated Hutchinson to a point?
I don't know that everyone's fallen off of him. He's still like a top 3 pick.
Yeah, but I'm saying draft. Why have they swapped positions at all?
The Ohio State game.
Yeah,
and Thibodeau got hurt.
Two games. Like it's too much, man. And I think if someone gets swallowed into this and ends up taking Hutchinson over Thibodeau, you're gonna see that team obviously have problems with that moving forward. Like I hate just in general how production can be, especially over the course of a player's career in college football, can be just completely forgotten about and washed away because of one or two big days or big games for another guy, or something we haven't even gotten to yet, and we'll see how this changes things. The combine. Like, people completely forget about production when you see how tall a guy is and how fast he can run in underwear. And it's insane to me. So Yeah, this whole discussion is very frustrating to me because I've always thought Thibodeau is better than Hutchinson. Still think he is, and to see Hutchinson up there at number one and ready to be potentially the first name taken off the board, I think a team's going to regret that if they end up doing it.
Yeah,
and hopefully it's not the Jags.
Looking at like, Jags need offensive linemen for the love of God.
Right.
You invested your franchise in one quarterback. Protect them.
Don't get sucked in.
Protect them, and you have some good edge rushers. But anyway, I don't know. We're talking about Jaguars right now. Yeah, Aiden Hutchinson is Todd McShay's top 32 prospects. Aiden Hutchinson's number one right now.
Yeah.
And I think the sentence that kills me is what we were just talking about. He says, if you want to see just how dominant Hutchinson can be, go watch his tape from Michigan's late November win over Ohio State when he had 3 sacks, 14 pressures, and 10 tackles. Cool. Great. If I'm spending a number one overall pick, I don't want to have to find just one game.
Mm-hmm.
And the only other game that we saw like that was the Penn State game. But as you and I have both said, Penn State's offense is atrocious.
Yep.
It's like,
and it starts at the point of attack, the offensive line.
Yeah, like imagine a mediocre offense from 2009, and you have Penn State's offense.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so I hope you're getting sacks.
One of those teams
against a team like that.
2010 that's trying to run the read option all the time, but they don't have the personnel for it. Like, that's
But I mean, if we're talking about that, like if we're talking about, oh, he had 3 sacks against Ohio State, why are we talking about the fact he had 0 sacks against Nebraska?
Right.
Or Wisconsin. Or Northwestern.
Yeah. And I guess you can get away.
Or Indiana.
You can get away with Wisconsin.
Or Maryland.
Because they just run the ball the whole time, but those other teams is not good. It's
Maryland,
not good.
PJ.
Yeah.
Maryland.
Hey, they have a two up there.
They have a Talia.
Tungavaloa. Yeah. I was spacing on the last name. I thought Tua could work either
Tua
way.
Jr. up there?
I thought Tua could work either way.
Tua 2.0?
With the last name.
Talia.
Talia,
yeah, you know what Talia didn't do? Get sacked by Aiden Hutchinson. But yeah, I mean, if you want to spend your number one overall pick, I hope somebody does, because then that'll just like leave a better player for the Falcons to miss on. But it is what it is.
To miss on.
Yeah, exactly. That's my favorite. One of my favorite traditions is going back to each draft class and just looking at all the players the Falcons could have had.
Right.
Versus the ones that they drafted. But it is what it is. I'm riding with the new crop of guys over at the Falcons right now. Listen,
yeah, for sure.
Terry Fontenot, last draft was interesting. We'll see how this one shakes out. We got to take a quick break. I want to come back. I've done this to PJ like the last 3 days. I want to pose another theoretical question to him.
I like
and
it.
Get his thoughts on it. We'll be right back. We're talking some more college football next, right here on Second Down. Second Down on ESPN Radio is presented to you by the Uniform Source. 2 different locations in Savannah to take care of all of your uniform needs. While we were in the break, PJ Zuko doing some sleuthing on the internet pulls up some more college football headlines for us. Zach Calzada, former Texas A&M quarterback, the last quarterback to beat the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Good point.
Is going to get a couple more chances to do it at least, as he is transferring to Auburn. We knew they were going to go out and get a quarterback. We just didn't know who it was going to be. Obviously, Holden Garner from BC is committed to them, coming in as a freshman, early enrollee. He's heading there maybe in a week or so.
Getting down to it.
Yeah, but now Zach Calzada coming in, giving Brian Harsin another quarterback there. So, TJ Finley, thank you for your service. But I think one of those 2 guys will probably be slinging it around for the War Eagle Tigers next year. PJ, did want to get into this real quick. We got a comment while we were in the break. This is my favorite one because you, of course, are a Penn State fan. It says, boy, y'all are some SEC homers. The guy was holding Aiden Hutchinson all night. That's from Charles Elmore. Charles, that's fine. You know what? We'll take the Orange Bowl away. Orange Bowl performance for Aiden Hutchinson. We'll take that one away because, according to you, Warren McClendon and Jamari Sawyer were holding all night. Even though I saw that video of Jamari Sawyer planting him into the Orange Bowl turf, and then it looked like holding. That just looked like getting dominated by a guy who's 100 pounds heavier than you. All right, well, if you're going to take the Orange Bowl away, I get to take Penn State away. I'm going to take that away from PJ. All right, so we're going to eliminate one of his 3-sack games. All right, that's fine. Let me ask you this. Was the left tackle from Wisconsin holding him the whole time? Or the right tackle? Or was the left tackle from Maryland holding him the whole time? Or the right tackle? Or Indiana? Look, Indiana. Charles Elmore, you could walk out right now, suit up for Ohio State, and you could get a sack against Indiana.
Most likely, yeah.
So if you want to start,
with Penix,
if your argument that Aiden Hutchinson should be a number 1 overall pick is that he was being held in the Orange Bowl, and that's why he didn't have any sacks, cool. Bet your franchise on that. I'm good. Here's my theoretical question that I had for you, PJ. Let's say things go the way a lot of people think they do. We have a repeat of the SEC championship. Alabama dominates. Will Anderson has 3 sacks in the game. He didn't have a sack in the SEC championship game, but he goes back to what he does, just an obscene amount of tackles for loss. Has, we'll call it 2 sacks. It's a good national championship. Alabama wins it. Bryce Young comes out, cooks that Georgia defense again. He had 400 yards last time. We're actually going to do this tomorrow, the over-unders. But I'll give you a preview. Over-under for Bryce Young in this national championship for passing yards is 311. I think it might be 311 and a half. But he had 420-plus yards in the SEC championship, right? Bryce Young comes out. He throws for another 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, wins the Natty. Heisman, national championship, SEC championship, all in the same year. Throws for like 800 yards in 2 games against Georgia. Would you be surprised if those 2 guys sat out next year?
Oh, holy cow. Man, because he is a redshirt freshman, right?
Correct.
Bryce Young?
Yeah, and Will Anderson is a true sophomore.
Would I be
Because the best receiver in the NFL right now is Jamar Chase, and he did it.
He did. I think those were kind of under different parameters. It was.
Is it different? Is it different now though? Because it's. I'm not saying like obviously it's still COVID, but I think more so than the parameters. I think that was guys figuring out they can do it, and the NFL doesn't care.
But then again, like he and Mike Parsons, I think, are the only 2 like huge, like notable names that did it and are still wreaking havoc on the NFL.
Exactly.
Yeah, so they can. I don't know. I feel like
what like if
I just feel like
Bryce
at
Young
that time there was also like there was more of a I don't know how to say this. There's like an unsure feeling around the whole COVID situation still that it heavily impacted that decision just as much as not getting hurt for them and being able to go to the NFL. Who says that's not still going to be around? Like your point, who said that's still not going to be around next year? No one is. I mean, it's hard to predict, but I'll put it this way. I would be surprised to see them do it because I think that's a really big commitment. Although I could see why, and I could certainly understand it, especially with the year that both of them have had this
One
year.
question are you running for office?
I tend to hear that I answer these questions very well, but really it's not
Yeah,
like
you
I'm
answer
not
them
trying,
well by not answering
I'm
them.
not trying to dodge anything. I could just really like in situations, I try and see both sides of stuff. I think people don't do that enough, first of all. But
Well, no, I think this is what I like about our show, and maybe some folks out there listening to it don't like it, but we don't really come on here with like takes.
like super hot.
I like
yeah,
it. We just talk things out.
right. Like I'm not gonna come on here. I love Kirk Herbstreit. I'm not gonna come on here and say that they don't love college
Okay, listen.
football.
Kirk Herbstreit had been up for like 48 consecutive hours. He had just called an Orange Bowl, had to fly across the country to do a 3-hour game day
Yeah.
before calling the Rose Bowl. He had a slip.
Believe me, yeah.
And also
he
people,
went on,
this isn't ESPN supporting ESPN. It's like people took a 8-second clip out of a 30-minute conversation,
that all,
and that's all they played. But anyway,
it's
carry
a
on.
big, bold
But okay,
quote.
you're not kirking this thing right here.
Yeah, no, not at all.
All right.
But the question was, would I be surprised if
If left next year, Will Anderson and Bryce Young aren't playing football?
I would be surprised.
I would be like not shocked
But
even in the slightest. I mean, think about like where the things that have changed in the last 365 days.
Yeah.
You have Bryce Young. We talked about this yesterday. The SEC Media Days coming into this season. Bryce Young was making $1 million before he ever suited up. Or I shouldn't say suited up, but threw like a starting pass for Alabama. Was making $1 million. Like blew Lane Kiffin's mind at SEC Media Days, right? So Will Anderson, he's going to be next year's Kayvon Thibodeau / Aiden Hutchinson, where this elite edge rusher, if he has another great game and Bryce Young has another great game and they win the national championship,
what more is there to do?
What else do you have left to prove? Like those guys are going to be top 5 picks. Bryce Young is going to be the number 1 quarterback take. And depending on how bad the Jaguars are next year, probably going to be the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah.
God, is Bryce Young going to end up in Houston?
Is Bryce Young going to end up on the same team as Trevor Lawrence?
Do they just move on from Trevor?
Right, that quick?
They pull a Cardinals?
I mean, we've seen.
Is Trevor Lawrence Josh Rosen?
Happen.
There's the hot take.
Ooh. Might be.
There's the hot take. No, I mean, listen. Bryce Young is going to be the first quarterback taken next year, right? That is what it is. Will Anderson's going to be a top 5 pick. Just he is that position, outside linebacker, defensive end that can get after the quarterback. He is they're for the most part the second or third highest paid position in the NFL, right? He's that guy. Would not be surprised at all if he doesn't play because they don't have anything left to prove. And how do you improve your draft stock over the number 1 pick?
Right, it's not possible.
And like, what were all the things that people were saying that NFL teams be concerned about with Micah Parsons and Jamar Chase and other players like that was, oh, well, they're going to get in those meetings and going to say, well, they don't care about their team, so how can we trust them? They pick both of those guys in the top 10. They don't care about that.
No.
Like, they literally don't care about that.
Right.
They haven't played football in a year. Are you in shape? I've seen your tape from the 2 years that you played college. Yeah, I don't care.
Right.
NFL teams showed you last year all of the things you think they care about, they don't care about. We've known this forever. All they care about is you are a physical monster. They don't even care about your stat production inside of college. Look at Justin Herbert. For the most part, they care about what you look like.
Yeah. In
terms of your physical prowess.
And a lot of, I know this is more of a jump from high school, I feel like, to college, but another point I think they could bring up is, well, are you in NFL shape size-wise?
Yeah.
And, well, I can just take a full year instead of playing college football and going to classes and just focus on getting to NFL.
But and see, that was the concern with so everyone's saying, and I understand we have to have things to talk about on the show, but like everyone's concern was about Devonta Smith last year was, oh, he's too slender to play wide receiver in the NFL. He is toasting people in the NFL right now. Kyler Murray was too small to play in the NFL. The Arizona Cardinals are going to the playoffs, and he's been really good, right? So all of those narratives, and again, we just talked about it. He kicked out another first-round pick quarterback that had been picked the year before.
Yeah.
So I going back to the original question, I would not be surprised in the least if we get to next year and Will Anderson and Bryce Young aren't playing for Alabama again. I will say this, though. If you are a college football fan and you're not an Alabama fan, you better hope that happens. Because
Right,
if both
yeah.
of those dudes are playing next year, go ahead and bet the house on Alabama winning the national championship and going 15-0 next year. Bet the house.
Yeah.
Because this is like this is a down year for them. And
It's supposed to be.
they're probably about to win the national championship.
Remember the SEC media days? The one question every coach or every interviewer asked to everyone they were talking to, this is the year to get Alabama, right?
Yeah, it ain't next year. It is not next year. We got to take a quick break. We'll come back with more right here on Second Down.
All right, Christian, I'm going to be super quick with this, but like we've talked about the Jags a couple times for whatever reason, and you know what's scary? I saw something today of like Blake Bortles' stats and Trevor Lawrence's stats from both of their rookie years or first years as the starting quarterback for the Jags, and they're like all almost exactly the same. Like,
Don't do this.
like within like
Don't do this.
hundredths of a point.
Well, I mean, if you want to do that, Gardner
Listen.
Minshew stats blow Trevor Lawrence's out of the water.
They do.
So PJ coming in just trying to rile
Just
up
saying,
people.
man, is Trevor Lawrence Blake Bortles?
Oh my God. All right. You better stop right now. We got 3 and Out coming up next. I have a huge show coming up for you here on ESPN Radio. Tavares King, former UGA wide receiver and NFL wide receiver, going to join him right at the top of the hour. Chris Hummer from 247 Sports hopping on at 3:20. In the 4 o'clock hour, you got Mike Bratton, SEC Mike. He's hopping on to preview the national championship. And then in the 5 o'clock hour, UGA legend Rennie Curran joining 3 and Out right here on ESPN Radio.